Peace and blessings, family. Once again, I've returned to make another quick video, another edition of Spiritual Food for Thought. I always say, family, I hope that all finds you well in this hour in your relationship with the Creator. I just pray, family, that keeping your focus on, the things of the Most High Power, because that's where we got to have our focus today. And that's the only way we're going to make it through this journey, family. Because make no mistake, family, we on a journey. We're on our journey to the kingdom. And that's what this experience is about. We had to experience everything that the Creator is as we have to go through this process of our creation. That, the Creator would prove the investment of the spirit of his divine love that he's invested in those who do understand and believe. I mean, it was necessary. The only way that the investment of his spirit could be proved in us is to go through this hell that we experience right now. And as I said, this existence is the realm of death and hell. And because death causes hell, all the evil that we see going on in this world, family, it was definitely, as painful as it is and hard it has been, is necessary. Because the bottom line is, ultimately, the Father's proven investment of the spirit of his divine love that makes us one with him. So in other words, we're going to seek and search out and keep going and enduring all things, no matter how hard it gets, no matter what. Because this, ultimately, as the scripture says, those who endure to the end, the same shall be saved. And as I said, when I'm talking about salvation, I'm talking about ultimately us being delivered from the darkness of this world and the effects of this world to come into our divine purpose as we understand ourselves through the eyes of the Creator, so that we can take our rightful place in his divine kingdom. And as we're made one with him, we're ultimately going to be made one with each other, our fellow creatures, and Mother Earth, and who he brought us all forth from. Such is the kingdom of heaven. So, with that said, before I move on, I just want to make my little point that I'm no teacher. I'm not trying to tell you what to do or believe or none of that. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. Because ultimately, it's the Spirit of the Most High that convinces us of all things. Because it's in him that we have the understanding that we have. And ultimately, family, we believe what we believe, because it's what he allows us to believe until the time that he chooses to wake us up and take us on that journey to coming into his divine truth, to ultimately be born of his spirit, so that we ultimately can be who he desired us to be. And as I said, all he ever wanted from us is to be ourselves, but with the understanding of his mind. So, with that said, what I want to touch on today is the reality that we are vessels. Okay, family? In this material world, we are vessels. We are earthen vessels. We are simply vessels in our flesh. We are vessels that the material world absolutely needs in order to express itself. Whether it's good, whether it's evil. It is what it is, family. It's just really it's time for us to put the big boy pants on and come to the reality of the things that's going on. And it's really simple things. But see, the spirit of pride wants to complicate everything and make things look more difficult than they really are. It's that, even like that trap, where one of the things that it was said that in the last days that many will run to and fro and knowledge will increase. And as we look at how we act today, we lust for knowledge. And as I said, we seek a whole lot of knowledge that's really irrelevant to our eternal being or eternal salvation, and us being put in our rightful place as far as the created beings that we are and what the Creator had in mind when he created us. And ultimately, like I said, the Creator's greatest desire, family, is to see the manifestation of the oneness of his kingdom, where all of us understand our purpose and place. And so we're able to be ourselves as we serve one another in the spirit of his divine love, which is how we serve our Creator. Because as we love one another, we love our Creator. Because our Creator is a part of all of us. So, in other words, family, we just have to have a reality check of really what's going on. And it's the Father in his graciousness is revealing these things to those who have an ear to hear. The word is being put out there, family, but unfortunately, the masses is not going to receive the truth. That's just the way it is. And so the thing is, we have to remember, in reality, family, we are vessels. We are participants in this creation process of being born again, of being spiritually birthed. Because until we receive the spirit of our Creator, family, we are dead spiritually. And so basically what we got walking around here is these earthen vessels, these vessels of the flesh that are a house to the spirit world. And so the bottom line is, unless we have the spirit of the divine love of our Creator, then we're walking in our flesh. So we are soul and body. Because in our flesh, we are a slave to our desires for pleasure. And so the reality is, family, so the works of darkness are manifesting themselves through our ignorance. Because if we're not spiritually alive, then we are walking in ignorance. If we ain't spiritually one and alive to the perfect will and understanding of our Creator, we are spiritually dead. So what are we? We are soul and body. Because these things are vessels. The only way to overcome these spirits of darkness is that we have to receive the spiritual understanding of our Creator. Because that's when we become spiritually alive. And as we are spiritually alive to our Creator, family, we begin to work to bring forth works of righteousness. And it's the righteousness of the Creator under the spirit of his divine love. Because ultimately, family, this is why we must be born again. Because if we ain't spiritually alive, family, we dead. We walking in the second death. See, to be outside of the mind of the kingdom of heaven is to be walking in the second death. See, it's called second death because it's the ultimate death, is to be spiritually dead to the Creator's divine will and understanding. So it causes us to walk in darkness, in self-deification and pride and all these things. Everything that's an adversary to the divine will of the Creator. Because this is the nature of Hasatan, or the devil, old cloven foot, whatever you want to call that sucker. It is what it is. In our flesh, he has power over us, and he rules in our lives. He rules in our existence in this existence. Because the flesh is the vessel in which he manifests his works of darkness and how he rules this world. Okay? So the bottom line is understanding when he said that I'm going to rule above the stars of the Creator. And I'm going to be like the Most High Creator. He said he's going to be like. He didn't say he was going to be the Creator. He said he's going to be like him. Because of that rule of the third of the stars that was cast down to the earth And these are the demons and devils that we know of in the spirit. And so the bottom line is our flesh is a house or vessel to these spirits to manifest the works of darkness that we see in this world going on around us today. That's been going on since the beginning. Okay, so the bottom line is these spirits have their way in willing vessels. Okay, now, as we continue to be born of the Spirit, there's a warfare going on that these devils is trying to hang on to their place, the place that they've been able to possess. But as the individual is being made spiritually alive to the Creator, which is the greater one that's in us than he is in the world, then these suckers got to take a hike. Okay? The spirits of darkness got to take a hike because those two natures can't occupy the same space in peace. And since the greater one is the Holy Spirit, which is the Spirit of the Father, since he's the greater one, then who got to leave? See, those that are not being born of the Spirit, the Father placed a portion of his Spirit in all men. But is admonished to us. It said, quench not the Spirit. Because the more our minds yield to the flesh, the mind of the flesh, it begins to quench the Spirit. Okay? So the more we feed our flesh, the weaker our spirit man gets. So this is why it's important for us to have that dialogue with the Creator to keep our flesh in check, because when we're in the presence of our Creator, works of darkness can't happen. So this is why I'm saying, family, we got to understand our place here. Because, see, the spirit of pride makes us think more of ourselves than we should. This is why we're in the condition that we're in. And so, as these are vessels for the spirit world to manifest their works through. So, that's both ways. Because as our vessels, we're the vessel that the Spirit of the Most High is working through as he cleans us up and fills us with the Spirit of his divine love that causes us to love ourselves in a righteous, pure, humble love of the Creator that quenches the spirit of pride, which is that spirit of self-awareness separated from the Creator, that causes us to live in a way that's subject to the serpent, the mark of the beast. Okay, so the bottom line is we got to understand it's one way or the other that's going on. And this is the warfare that's going on inside of us. And the battle, the place that's desired to possess, because it's as this place is possessed by the spirits that's at work here, that's what ultimately the works will come through. So the battle is for our minds. Because the mind is the pinnacle of these earthen vessels. So this is why we have to feed ourselves spiritually as we have that fellowship and that dialogue with our Creator. So we desire the things of the Creator in his righteousness under the Spirit's divine love that ultimately makes us one with him. So as we become in agreement with the understanding of our Creator, family, that's what causes us to yield and obey to his will, which is the highest form of praise and worship to our Creator, is our obedience. That obedience can't come unless we understand. That's why it's admonished to us. In all you're getting, get understanding. Okay? Because without understanding, family, we can't believe. And this is the way the Creator wired us. He didn't wire us to believe things we don't understand. So the things we don't understand, those are the things that we're supposed to be asking questions about and seeking a Creator about those answers that we need. Because as we get those answers and we understand, family, that's when we're able to comply to what He desires for us. So our vessels become yielded to His will. Okay? So the bottom line is, as we continue to understand that we are vessels, vessels are containers. Okay? They have to contain something. Otherwise, a vessel is useless. So it is one way or the other. Our earthen vessels are ultimately filled with the spirit of divine love of our Creator, or is filled with the spirit of darkness, of the serpent, the mind of the serpent. It's one or the other. You see what I'm saying? Because those spirits ultimately dictate who the person is and what the person is. So the bottom line is, family, we have to never forget and always remember, we are created beings. And we was ultimately created to glorify the Creator. The ultimate question comes to each of us. So where do we stand with the Creator? Are we a yielded vessel of His, as His child, as we continue to seek and search out His will and understand ourselves through His eyes, so we can be all He desires us to be? Or are we subject to the serpent, which causes us to deify our own selves and be our own God? So we seeking and searching all things that please us, to make us comfortable and have us be able to have a mindset where we comfortable being in this darkened understanding and being separated from the divine will of our Creator. That's the question we got to ask ourselves. Are we a yielded vessel to the perfect will of our Creator, or are we a vessel that's in opposition to His divine will, so we at war with the Creator? Because that's what the spirit of Hasatan is, at war. He's the adversary of the Creator. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, are we yielded to the spirit of light, or are we yielded to our dark side? Because that's what the devil is. He's our dark side. And for the child of the Most High, we ain't settling for that. We don't want to be subject to the spirit of our dark side. We want to be made one with the perfect will of our Creator, so that we can serve our Creator in spirit and in truth and be a light in this world as we go through our born again process. So the bottom line is, I guess the ultimate question is, what kind of vessel are we? We all have to ask ourselves that question. We got to get our eyes off our brothers and sisters and start in trying to judge them on what vessel they are. You see what I'm saying? And see the Creator about showing us the vessel we are. Because the reality is, we really can't help our brothers and sisters in this state of helplessness as we stuck in our flesh, in the ways of our flesh. You see what I'm saying? So He said, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness shall be filled. And as I said, I know it's written in there righteousness, but I love to say His righteousness. Because the righteousness of the Creator is the only righteousness that matters. So if we ain't been filled with His righteousness, and His righteousness is simply His mind, His understanding, which brings forth His ways and all these things. So we could be the best us we could be to glorify the Father. Because as long as we trying to be like some other man or something, we being fake. And we denying the Father who He made us. And denying ourselves understanding of His divine purpose for our lives, so we can truly be ourselves. because all the Father ever wanted us to be is ourselves, but with the understanding of his mind. The same way the Son was able to be himself. As I said, he was an example of what and who we are, but we don't realize it because of all the lies we've been told and all the distractions we constantly bombarded with, so that we don't have the fellowship that we need with our Creator within, because we're so busy with all this stuff around us. So the bottom line is, family, you know, as I said, we just got to understand we're vessels. We're created beings, and we was created with a purpose. We weren't created to come into this world and just glorify ourselves and have a good time and goof off and experience all these pleasures and stuff that don't do nothing but continue to feed our own self-awareness that causes us to be separated from the divine understanding and will of our Creator, because we don't know ourselves through his eyes. So, you know, like I said, family, we gotta continue to seek the Spirit to put us in our place. Because as we come into the presence of our Creator, family, it's what puts us in our place. And as I said, you know, understanding that that's what the Holy Spirit does. It brings us into the presence of our Creator. And as long as we're in his presence, family, we're humbled by that. And so we yielded vessels then when we in his presence. And so that's what I'm saying, family. We got to understand, are we yielded vessels to his will, to his divine will, his divine purpose for our lives? Or are we vessels that's in opposition to him? We all filled with something, family. It's no getting around that. If we ain't filled with the spirit of divine love of our Creator that makes us one with him, each other, our fellow creatures, and Mother Earth and who he brought us from, if we ain't filled with that, then we are the spirit of the adversary, which is total opposite of that. And we are our own God, period. So who's going to stand against the Creator? Because as I've said too, mention this, and I'm seeing this now. When we talk about gods, we talking about beings that control, okay? Control through manipulation. When we talking about gods, that's what we talking about. When we talk about the Creator, it's something beyond that. The Creator is greater than any God, okay? People say he's the God of gods. No, I can't put that word in that term to the Creator. And until he reveals his new name, that's what I'm going to address him as, the Creator. Because he is what he is. And he said that he's going to reveal his new name to us. Because all his other names that we've associated with the Creator, we've defiled by our behavior in being contrary to his divine will. So those names are all defiled. So we have to come in to understand what that new name is. And we ain't going to know it until he reveals it to us in his time, when he's ready to really wrap all this stuff up. And so the bottom line is, you know, we are but vessels. We are but dust. And he's the potter, we the clay. And we're in the process of being made and shaped and conformed to the image of his Son. That's what I'm saying. I believe the Son existed. I don't know his name because I wasn't there and he didn't introduce himself to me. So I don't know his name. I don't put no significance to his name right now. I put significance to what he accomplished. And he opened the door. As the scriptures say, he was the firstborn of many brethren. So he opened the door for us to be born again too. To be born of the same spirit that he was born of. The same spirit that raised him from the dead is quickening our minds right now by the revelation of the same spirit that raised him from the dead. So the bottom line is, family, we got to stay humble and remember, we are vessels that's being used in this creation process that we're experiencing right now as we go through this battle of good and evil. But it's all necessary that the Father would prove the reality of those who belong to him, that we're going to continue to seek and search him out and seek out his will for our lives and love him no matter what we got to suffer. He said, those who endure to the end, the same shall be saved. That means put in our right place and receive our inheritance of his divine kingdom of heaven, where we all will be one with him, each other, our fellow creatures, and Mother Earth, who he brought us all forth from. Such is the kingdom of heaven. So, family, with that said, I think that's all I got to say. And I hope I said something to give you something to consider and think about, that you could take these things to the Creator yourself and seek and search him out on those matters. And I pray that the Most High would continue to bless you and watch out over you and keep you and meet your every need, as long as you continue to seek and search him out for yourself. So, family, with that said, I'll say one love and peace.